Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our talks on architecture and beyond. This is the third edition of these talks, and we are super excited to be back. I'm here at the Cosentino City, Singapore, and I'm super thankful for with all of you for joining. So, as you know, usually we do these talks because Cosentino, we are committed to sustainability. So this time, the theme of the talks will be commitment to the future, the planet, and the people. Today, we're excited to have our friends from Domain Architects. I will address them as Nora and Mass because that's the way that they, they wanted to keep it more casual. And we're super excited to be here again. We waited a couple of minutes to make sure that we have more people joining. And today is going to be a super casual conversation. We're going to know a little bit more about their background and how they have been working with other projects to make sure that sustainability is also part of architecture. And that's also the commitment that we have here at Cosentino. Just to tell you a little bit about Cosentino, we are a Spanish company. Our headquarters is in Almeria, Spain, and we are committed to a more sustainable future. One of the main achievements that we have done so far was that now our southern surface is has the hybrid technology, and our dectan colors are also carbon neutral. So enough about us. Today we want to hear about also Jan. He is the long-term collaborator with Cosentino, and he has been curating these talks for 3 years now. So Jan, the floor is yours. We hope you enjoy.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Thanks again for Cosentino for offering such platform to architects from Singapore and Southeast Asia. And so before I introduce the main architect, I just would like to share with everyone the theme of this third tab series, Talks on Architecture and Beyond. So this year we are focusing on the overarching theme of commitment to the future, the planet, and the people through the lens of sustainability, innovation, and materiality. So these topics are increasingly finding relevance in the field of architecture, in building sustainable cities and resilient communities. So while we know that a world without commitment will only lead to disaster and disorder, this series hopes to bring to light the role of architects in healing the planet, healing the people and the communities, to fight climate change and to set the trajectory towards a world united by virtuous commitment. So to start this positive change in this landscape of scarcity, architects need to innovate and find creative solutions to design sustainably, ensure energy efficiency, and to respect the environment. And so for this, materials which are used should likewise be built to last, with a preference for renewable resources and those with a lower embodied carbon footprint. So even with the needs of a society that are evolving according to these ever-changing times, trends and demand, the architecture of our built environment should continue to remain rooted in the layers of history, but not to lose its ability to anticipate and adapt to new realities. And for all of this deep topic and very meaningful topic, I'm very excited today to welcome our friends from Malaysia. So the main architect. I had a great chance and a great opportunity in staying in one of the hotels that they have designed, and that's why it was an evidence for me to welcome them today to share their own story, their own history of 20 years in the making. So the main architect is a design-based dynamic architectural firm working on various types of projects. The firm believes that innovative design is a result of an understanding of the client's goal and aspiration, the building type, context, and budget, and the synthesis of these issues by architects with proven design abilities. So Mass and Nora's, they share this passion to create and to innovate and to also be responsible towards sustainable architecture for timeless design. So I'm very excited to welcome them on board. So let's give a big round of applause, well, digitally, a big round of applause to Nora and Mass that will share with us their journey of 20 years in the making of the main architect. I'm very excited to welcome them on board. Welcome. The floor is yours, Nora, Mass. over to you.
Thank you, Jan. And thank you, Patricia, for Cosentino, for having us today. And we'll be presenting a bit or sharing with all of you, of what has happened over the last 20 years. And really, it's going to be more of a casual presentation. So hopefully we can just share our experience with everyone up there, architects, designers. Okay, before that, let me share the screen.
Full screen.
Okay. Let me just start by telling you about us. We started the journey in 1993. If you're wondering why 1993, 1993 is when we arrived in Australia. So why both of us are actually Australian trained. So Mas went to Launceston and I went to Adelaide Uni. So, and as you can see, before we flew, we wanted to be architects. So
this was in those early 90s when this was my idea of what architecture was back then, coming from Asia, from Malaysia. It was during a time when the economy was booming. On the left, in that image, you can see the construction of KLCC. And on the right side was this sort of more architectonics movement in the other parts of the world. So during that time, that was my idea of what architecture was. It's about all these mega superstructure buildings.
Big developments.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what architects do. That's what we thought. So, and then we arrived. I arrived in Adelaide, and Mas arrived in Launceston.
Yes, Launceston. So we both ended up in more conservative cities, coming from the sort of, like I mentioned, the developing city, to more conservative cities where, the picture on the left is Maya building that's in Launceston, in the heart of Launceston. And that is a 6-story building that was one of the tallest building for quite some time, that was built in the 1960s. So that was a tall building in Launceston. And it was really the smaller scale that we didn't expect to see in our sort of journey of architecture. But I think looking back, I think these were some of the sort of experience and exposure that we had that actually shaped our architecture that we are doing today.
Yeah, like Adelaide. Adelaide is a small city. It's a beautiful city. I wouldn't trade not going there for anything. I was there for a number of years, almost 10 years in Adelaide. So the projects or the things that we do in Adelaide is at a different scale, especially the town. Well, the city is very matured. It's actually known for a city of churches. There's old colonial buildings, Victorian, up to the new, recent, modern buildings. And it's a very rich city by itself, architecturally. So that is the sort of background that we were trained in.
So it totally changed the perspective of what architecture was, and dealing with smaller scale buildings actually made you appreciate more on, the finesse of materials, the quality of spaces that you create. And during that time also, this is one of the most famous architects in Australia. This is Glenn Murcutt. So it was that time when Australia was kind of in search of their regional language, and he sort of introduced this kind of modern Australian vernacular architecture with the use of local Australian materials. That they had abundance of steel, they had abundance of these local materials, and he turned them into private residences that were fitting very well into the Australian landscape. So again, it was that shift from the shifting away from the typical vernacular or the European architecture that was in the Australian landscape during that time?
Then obviously after so many years being in Australia, and we finished off our degree, so we came back. And when we came back, we were actually involved in the Putrajaya master plan. If you're wondering what Putrajaya is actually the Malaysian administrative city. It's a very well planned, huge master plan. So that's where we met. We were working on this huge mega project.
Yeah,
back in 1998.
In 1998, 99 to the year 2000. So we were the juniors drawing up this map day and night. It was sleepless night. We were working tirelessly to actually draw those lines. You know,
yeah. So this is our first project when we started. We were doing mega. It was a really a huge project and mega scale projects when we came back. So that was quite a big shift for us because we were in Australia and we didn't really get to do big projects. So when we came back, we were really attached to all these big mega projects that was happening in Malaysia because there were so many things going on during that time.
Yeah, and whenever we take the flight, if you take a flight from the KL International Airport, if you fly up north or northeast, you'll be flying over this administrative city, and every time we fly over, we'll be looking down at where we started, you know. And sometimes I wish I would be able to tell the rest of the passengers that I drew those shorelines, you know, those curvature that you see down there. I know I can remember the radius of those curves, and I know there were areas that I messed up, but they got it built anyway. So those were, you know, the starting of our that was the starting point of our career.
So as we progressed, so of course we started doing projects, and well, really the title of what we want to share today is Accidentally Green. I think that's probably sums up a lot of the things what has happened over the years since we started doing since we started designing and become architects. Because honestly, we were not trained to be green. We were not trying to achieve. We were not trying to be green.
Yeah.
It just happened.
Yeah.
Honestly, it just happened.
Well,
so
yeah, we titled it as Accidentally Green because it was really it's something that's more intuitive or second nature to us. That when we do our design, it's just, you know, designing for the comfort of human and also respecting the natural environment. So it was just a natural sort of progression as we move towards our project.
So then 2003, that's when Mass actually started, when he got his license, he started the business. And ever since, this is the evolution that some of the projects that we worked on since 2003 up to date. And you will realize that projects has evolved. We started off with smaller projects like detached houses, renovations, cafes, bungalows, and as time progresses, we were fortunate enough to do bigger scale projects, and it's always been a learning curve over all these years. But each and every project that we do put our heart and soul in it.
Yeah, regardless of the scale.
Yeah. So. And for today, we want to touch on all the projects. We're just going to make it short. Probably the first 4 projects, we're just going to give a brief introduction of what we have done and what we did. But Mas will be talking more about a recent project, which is the Chloe and the Kapas project, which we recently completed and won awards for. And hopefully that will be beneficial to everyone, and we can just if you have any questions later, we'd be more than happy to respond to. So this is we call it Back Home project because this is actually a refurbishment of 6 shop lots. Is a readaptive reuse of an old colonial building right smack in the middle of Kuala Lumpur. And it was a very interesting project.
It's not really a big scale project, but what's interesting about it is because it was designed and completed at that turning point when backpacking became quite a trendy experience in Kuala Lumpur. But somehow most of the backpackers joined were done cheaply. They were, the shop houses being subdivided into small rooms for, just to accommodate as many guests as possible. There were some that had rooms without windows and so on. So they were quite horrible, and we wanted to actually change that landscape, and we were probably one of the first few that actually completed this with proper compliance to all the permits, because during that time when we checked with the Budget Hotel Association, they actually informed that 90% of the budget hotel in Kuala Lumpur were not properly registered because they could not get the proper permits in the first place.
So so if any one of you are wondering what's a shop lot, in Malaysia, shop lot is a very common typology of building, which is actually just a terrace lot of shops. So with this project, we actually had 6 shop lot to work with, and what we did was very, I might say, quite straightforward, but yet we tried to salvage as much as we can from the project. So just a quick run, for example, like the existing plywood floor, which has been reused. And these are some of the existing stairs, because the building has been refurbished a few times. So these are some of the stairs that we tried to keep and make use towards the end of the project. And what we realized with this project is that we had a lot of issue trying to educate the contractor on recycling materials, because they couldn't understand what it means to recycle, because it's always cheaper to do new than to recycle.
I mean, we wanted to keep the elements as much as possible to be kept at site and to be reused them in other ways, so like with the staircase that you see in the center of that in the center image, there were 6 number of the staircases that we wanted to reuse most of their steel in the new proposal. But in one of the early visits to the site, we found that some of the staircases were missing because the contractor actually brought them out and discarded them. And we got so mad at the contractor for not understanding to how and why we wanted them to be kept at site and to reuse them. And for them, I mean, we can't really blame them for not understanding our real intention. It's not so much about the cost. It's not so much about trying to be cheap, but it's really this idea. Now, this idea of keeping things at site without removing them or having them transported out and having to bring in new materials to the site.
Okay, so just to cut it short, it's like, for example, the stairs that you see on the right-hand side. If you see there's like 2 different stairs, that's because they threw out half of the material out. So we end up we could only recycle half of the stair. So as you can see, that's why we had 2 different materials. But those are the things we adapted in the project as we move on, and it becomes unique to the site itself, and like this.
Well, we salvaged most of the plywood. This plywood they were used as the floor for the upper level, and we really kept them and we reused them into furniture.
We reuse, these are all recycled ply, which we use as the bunk beds for the.
And some of the rotten ones, we had to take them down, and before they get discarded, we actually turn them into mold to cast this concrete panel wall in the courtyard. So the idea again for this shop lot, because usually the typography is actually very deep and very dark in the center, so we actually punch a sort of courtyard in the center of it, and we reuse some of those plywood. If you can see those, how they were configured in different sizes, because those were what was kind of available that we could salvage from the site. So we make sure that those materials were used to the point that they're rubbish, that they had to be discarded away. So that's the wall that's framing the courtyard. The next one. So the walls sort of continue into the cafe inside with the double volume space that brings in a lot of light into the center of the space.
So these are just some of the raw finishes. I mean, we did recycle a lot of the materials from the original building to make use to turn this into the backpackers home, and I think it was quite a good project for us to work on. It was one of those projects that we spent a lot of time on, and I think the owners also, the business was really good, and they were getting a lot of good reviews on the business for this new so-called new feel of backpackers coming into Malaysia, and they were really fully booked most of the time. Okay, let's go quickly to this.
I'm gonna touch on this one very quick because this is not a really big project, but it's a small private residence. This is just in the outskirts of Kuala Lumpur, about 20 or maybe 15 kilometers away from KL, but it's set in this nice kind of green setting. It's a sort of significant project to us because it was again done at a turning point of where Malaysia was looking for the identity of a new tropical architecture. And before this, and this was around 2007. Before this, the idea of tropical architecture would refer back to very traditional, vernacular kind of architectural style. So what we wanted to do was to introduce modern sort of composition, but again, you know, addressing all the issues and environmental aspects of
facade. So there was a lot of heat that's going to be generated, and because of the facade was actually facing west. So there was a lot of things that needs to be done to ensure that the house is naturally ventilated, lights. So really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to achieve was that hopefully every area in the house did not have to switch on the lights during the daytime.
And one of the cooling strategy was also to place the pool on top of the roof, so that would cool down the spaces below without, you know, investing into other form of roof design for passive cooling for the house.
And of course, the west facing actually gets the view of the nice view from the unit. So these are just some of the photos that we did with playing with materials and having a lot of sunlight coming into these spaces. And we had a bit of fun with this one because Mas was saying, oh, there's a lot of mimosa, which is a type of plant on site when we first
I'm sure everyone familiar. This is also called touch me not, I think, or shy plant or something.
So we actually, Mas came up with, oh, why don't we do something with this? And it became, we did more study on it, and we worked with a local sculpture artist, and we came up with this as a sun shading device to the unit. Again,
the idea is taking that nature and transform it into, you know, a more sort of architectural form, but again, you know, we having that what was found at site to be embedded as part of the architecture.
So, and the summer house is just a very small pavilion that we did that was actually engraved in the landscape, if you want to say it. We tried to make it as if like it was part and integrated into the landscape.
And we wanted it to be done as if the landscape was kind of untouched, but of course we needed the floor space. So we designed something that was lightweight. It was actually at a slope, and we actually had the sort of soil above it to actually give back that green into the space. We also designed that wall to actually, because this is in a kind of quite high density area, we have all the condominiums surrounding it. So we have all this landscape wall to actually provide the privacy into this space. And again, the idea of that veranda that, you know, you can actually sit out, this is east facing, you can sit out and enjoy the landscape while you are still protected from the sun.
And then we'll touch now on Chloe. I think we'll go into much more detail with Chloe Hotel, because I think that's a pretty significant project in our office too. We had the project for over 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hiccups along the way, planning approval, the construction of the MRT underground line, which was touching our site, that actually stopped the planning permission for quite some time.
So Jan mentioned that he slept in the hotel, but before he slept in the hotel, this was what was on site. It was a very old bungalow, post-war.
Yeah, it's a post-war building, not a big site. I mean, we had to work within about 0.4 acre. And so the program was, it was very important for us to keep most of the main lobby at the grade level, because we wanted to get the landscape to kind of flow into into the main lobby. Just a quick run. Basically, we have 2 levels of basement, and above the basement we have the main lobby. Above it we have the common facility or the guest facility floor, and we have 6 floors of rooms with a total of 85 rooms. And on top we have what we call the artist suite. Okay. So we have the usual studies, because for us, although this is like very basic what architects should do, but again, it was very important for us to actually look into building orientation to make sure that we are optimizing the passive green aspect of the building. So the building ended up with many facades,
few layers of skin.
Layers of skins.
Because we wanted to reduce the use of air conditioning, especially like typical hotels. All the corridors would be in the building. And we wanted to minimize all that and get as much light into the building, and also not have every space be air conditioned. So this was designed, that was always been at the back of our mind when Mas is actually the lead designer for this project. So, and yeah, the office has been looking at it for the last 10 years. So it really became a part of domain, really. There's a lot of effort that has been put into.
And this project, just to be clear, that it's actually in the heart of KL. So it's actually in the CBD area. So one of the challenge was to create this, as Nora mentioned, sort of to minimize the use of air conditioning. So we really push our idea of having naturally ventilated corridors. And I think if this building were to be in a different kind of setting, if it's in a mountain or if it's on the beach side, this is common to be naturally ventilated. But being in the city is quite a challenge, which even the client were, they came back and kept asking us whether we really wanted to do this. They were very anxious about it.
And I think we were anxious about it also, because it was a huge gamble on our side, whether we weren't sure whether it was going to work.
But of course, we didn't tell them. We told them, no, this is going to work. We know this. So
it was really a try and error, but we do believe that it was going to work based on the studies, and yes, it is in the middle of town, CBD, so there's hardly any air movement, I would say, and but we still needed to make sure that it was comfortable enough.
Well, again, being in the tropics, there's always the worry of having this kind of openness with the corridors, with the sort of issue with rain splash, and issue with too much sun penetrating through the corridors. But in the end, I think we're both quite happy with it. It turned out to be nice corridor spaces.
Yeah, I was actually very happy with how the creepers and the plants actually grew. Well, I was worried that it was going to die, but yeah, it actually grew quite well and quite nice, which it actually shaded the corridor. So as you can see, all the corridors are actually naturally ventilated, and all the greens were on the facade, and
because the building is kind of squashed between other sort of development, we had to create this kind of U shape to create its own what we call the urban oasis that has this green that you can see how it's linking from below, where we had the porte cochere below, and it's sort of kind of grow upwards to become the vertical garden. And if you see the block towards the end there, it's also lifted up from the common or the guest facilities floor to actually promote the cross ventilation to take place. Okay. And
we actually managed to salvage the timber trusses from the roof from the existing house. The house was, how did this project started? Actually, they wanted to refurbish the house.
Yeah, we wanted to refurbish, but of course we could not meet the number of rooms, and because the land is actually in a prime area, so in the end the client decided that it was about time for them to actually demolish and build something.
So it started actually with the trying to do a motel in this small structure, and it involved to be Chloe at the end. But we managed to look into the recycling part.
So we took down those timbers, which in the beginning we didn't know what to do of them, but as the project progressed, we turned some of them into furniture that we reused back in the lobby and in the rooms. And the bulk of it, we actually cleaned them up and reused them as the sort of the entrance canopy to the hotel.
So it was actually left on site for a while.
Yeah. So to us, it was very fitting that we took something from above, which formed the rafters of the building, and we actually put it back up where it sort of belongs. You know? Okay. So most of the materials in this hotel, we actually tried to keep them as natural as possible. It's kind of utilitarian in a way, but we actually softened it up with
the soft finishing,
the fabric and the colors. Yeah.
And the furnitures, and a lot of the things in the hotel are actually custom designed by us and by local artists, from the lightings to the furnitures, right? So really, a lot of people put a lot of work in this space just to get something different. And really, I think where this project was a success is because the client itself believed in what we believed in. So it was a good match, really, and that's why I think this project went quite far, because the client believed in us, and he also is into it. So it sort of like grew. The project just grew organically in terms of the design, isn't it? The materials, the look of it, the look and feel of it, really.
And this is the lobby, the main lobby. If you can see, we have the skylight above. Is the idea of keeping that relationship between the inside and the outside, so that when you sit down on those sofas, you can still feel as if you are outside, but you are protected. The photo on the right side is taken on a stormy day, so on that day you'll be able to sit there and you can still almost experience the weather outside with the trees brushing against the windows due to the heavy sort of wind and so on, but you'll feel kind of protected being in that space.
Yeah, and yeah, with the materials, the color template, and we just wanted to share with you about this. Being an architect, look and feel is very important to us. How the material feels, how the material look, you are able to touch it. Apparently, when we did the sample materials, the PR agency, well, the client's PR agency came, and they were holding phones, and they were snapping pictures of all these materials. They didn't even touch the materials. They looked away and looked at the screen. Only then we realized how powerful social media is. And it seems that for them, things need to look good on camera. So that was a bit of a shift for us, because you know how architects that was trained 20, 30 years ago, it's all about, you know, building materials, filling it.
I couldn't really comprehend it in the beginning, but in the end, I mean, I keep saying this, that, you know, although social media is taking over, how architecture
things
looks
are,
like,
yeah.
you know. But for as long as you do good architecture, you are very attentive to the materials that you use, the natural materials, I think it will eventually look good.
We hope.
Yes. And just to let you know, basically this is the room. This is the standard room, which we kept it to be quite narrow in terms of the floor plate, so that we are able to bring in as much natural light into the space. And we kept a lot of the materials to be in natural materials as well. And we finished most of them with non-chemical or non-oil-based coating. So we use, if you go into the room, you would not be able to find a single piece of PU product or polyurethane plastic products. We don't even have laminates in these rooms here. Okay, I think we can just go on.
We had loft.
Yeah.
The units have loft, if you want to call it, like all this penthouse. They have 5 different rooms. They call it theme rooms, which is the reading room, the growing room, the draw, eat, and listen. So
I think your favorite is?
Yeah, my favorite would be the room to grow, because I loved it. Well, literally, you can do gardening in the room. They will provide like soil, some of the gardening accessories. So that's it's just it's something. It's really an experience for patrons to come, and they get to choose which theme that they fancy. So that's the room to grow. Of course, this is one of my favorite, but they've got different rooms. Oh, you didn't show the rooms.
No.
Okay. So if you like painting, there's room to paint where they have canvases and paint. If you like to cook, there's a room where
room to eat.
Room to eat where you can you can try out recipes and stuff. So, but it's a really they put a lot of effort in designing each and every piece of material.
The joy of this project is also working with a lot of the local artisans, and as we mentioned, most of the pieces were done locally. Most of the designs were done by local designers, and although there were some kind of some pieces that were kind of mid-century kind of inspired pieces, but these are some of our local artisans, carpenters, wood makers that we work with to actually do the furniture for the hotel. So if you look at some of these pieces, they were really designed to be quite utilitarian in a way that we don't want to waste some materials. We like to keep the originality of materials. So they were designed to be pretty slim and so on, that we had to try mock-up after mock-ups and so many testings to make sure that they're steady enough, keeping the idea of, of them being slim, utilitarian in a beautiful way. Okay. Another maker that we work with to make clays.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, now we just very quickly go on Kapas, because we only have a few minutes left. So Kapas is actually a condominium in Bangsa, and this is the end product after how many years?
About, I think, 6 years since we started the project. Yeah.
Do you want to?
Yeah, the idea of Kapas is to actually, because it's actually designed on kind of hill slope, it's a natural hill slope, we really wanted to minimize how the building occupies the site. So in the end, we managed to actually squeeze the entire program within 30% of the lot size, and the other 70% were kept as the green landscape. And we've also designed the so that's the landscape that you can see in front. We've also kept sort of natural depression in the center of it, and we turned that into the retention pond that you can see in the center, which also became a sort of recreational sort of facility for the residents. What you see on the left side there is actually the wall that's actually enclosing the car park podium. But we designed it as a landscape wall with all this preparation, all the perforated wall, using what we call them as ventilation blocks. They are concrete blocks to allow light and air to pass through. So it's a perforated wall, and the same wall kind of wrapped into the main lobby. And
yeah, we wanted a lot of light and natural ventilation to
Yeah.
come in, because they do have, it's on a hill, and the view is just magnificent for this.
yeah,
I mean,
and here you are seeing the second tallest tower in the world, which is the Merdeka PNB 118. And yeah, it has like really nice view of the KL skyline. But the challenge was also because the view that's facing the KL skyline is east facing. So we had to design the balconies to be pretty wide to ensure that we are still able to screen or shade off the morning sun. Okay. And again, our sort of endeavor of using local vernacular materials that help to soften the entire look of the project. Okay. We really wanted to do something that is sort of different, so we tested out with this black cladding, although we had some issues earlier on, but finally this is the product. So what we wanted to achieve was, we didn't want it to look as if it's just a black aluminum cladding, so we wanted to soften it. We ended up using like 4 different tones of black, and they were matte black, and in the end the result was awesome. Okay. Moving forward from there on, basically we are very excited with this project here.
this is well, it's ongoing. It's hopefully we'll get this built soon. This is actually another refurbishment project. It's an heritage building, an Art Deco, right in the middle of Kuala Lumpur, and hopefully this will be turned into a hotel.
Yeah.
Very soon. We can't release too much information on it, but this again, we're trying to do something very similar, trying to be responsible as much as we can to the existing context, to the existing building, and
while adding the 2 additional floor on top of that sort of Art Deco building. So you can see that new build kind of floating above it. That design-wise, it still have that. It still resonate that sort of Art Deco, but in a more contemporary way of composing the shape and style of the architecture. Okay. And also our continuous endeavor of believing in renewable materials. In this one here, being in Malaysia, we have plenty of bamboos, but it's still, I mean, it's progressing well now, but it's still in the experimental kind of stage where not only that we believe in using this material, but it's also our idea of reaching out to the more rural communities. In this case here is the native indigenous people in the rural, so that they can all still be part of our progress of development.
And also we do also look into some new ideas on township. So for example, these are just some of the proposals that we've done earlier, and trying to look into more sustainable concept, more
I mean, again, the idea of self-sustaining cities, you know, and again, this was designed during the pandemic. So, I mean, a lot of ideas were focusing around the idea of being able to self-sustain and being detached yourself from the rest of the city, while you can operate with sufficient facilities, including health, schools, and so on. And the idea of being able to work from home. I keep going back to this simple sketch that was done by one of my lecturer. This was during the first year, and the idea, the basic principle of architecture. And in this case here, there's this man that we are designing a space for him. We designed the chair for him and the table, and we check on his ergonomic, his height, and so on. We look at the materiality to ensure that he's comfortable to do his task or reading. And of course, we have to provide him the shelter against the harsh weather condition from outside, against rain and shine. But at the same time, we need to provide him sufficient light so that he is able to actually do his task or do his reading. And we want to open up windows so that he still have that relationship to his environment, He's able to see his apple tree and when the apple is ripe enough for him to pick. And by doing so, we'll be promoting that that cross ventilation throughout to ensure that he has that sort of comfort that he should get being in that piece of architecture. So it's a very simple idea, which to me, that the basic principle of architecture, for as long as we can satisfy our end user, the user, then the rest is actually bonus and addition in adding other sophisticated systems, roof system, wall system, smart system. And we talk about big words like, for example, a green building index, environmental sustainable goals and so on. These are the bigger words. But for as long as we are able to satisfy the basic principle of architecture, the rest is bonus. And it's already good architecture. And when you put more to it, then you'll be creating, really good pieces of architecture. And to us, that is what matters. That's very important to us. Not so much. I think we are being labeled as green architect, but we are not so much the green type of architect who do all the numbers.
Not intentionally, you know what I mean? It's more of just being responsible.
Yes.
And making sure the projects that we do are being sensitive to all these issues. Yeah. But like Mas said, we're not after the numbers, like to get accreditation.
We do get recognition and awards for being green.
But that wasn't our intention to like being, to be green on paper. Yeah. It's really, we just believe that as long as you practice to be responsible to the built environment, I think being green comes naturally.
Yes.
And we're glad that we're able to do that with our clients. And we do have good clients that believe in what we do. And that sort of like help us progress in creating hopefully better architecture.
Yes.
I'll leave it to you, Jan.
Okay, back to you, Jan.
All right, thank you so much, Nora and Mass. I was listening and everything is flowing so smoothly from one project to another to understand the evolution from one project to another and how things fall perfectly. And how you've been building up from like one exploration to another exploration. To everyone, feel free to ask a question, and so they will be channeled to me, so I can moderate all of these questions. But I do have a first set of questions to ask to Nora and Mass. In your career. Because when we look at all of this series of projects and how they've been flowing pretty perfectly from one another, but did you have any turning point, any moment of like realization where you were like, I know why I'm here, I know why I'm doing it, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So I'm very curious on that. Did you have this kind of like aha moment where you're like, I'm here and I know why I'm doing it?
Well, I guess it's when we receive the awards, So there okay, we've done something good, we've done something right.
Okay.
Yeah, because honestly, when you do something, it's really for the betterment or to make sure whoever the patrons that's going to be in the building are comfortable, they're happy. It's just creating that environment for the people to come in. So, but really beyond that, when someone comes up to you and say like, look, that idea was brilliant. We love being in that space. Or it's a beautiful space to be in. That's when you realize like, oh, well, we did do a good job on it. But if not, we really appreciate all the feedback that's been given to us.
Yeah.
And that's when we thought like, okay, well, at least someone likes our work.
Well, at the end of the day, we're not the one occupying the building, you see. So, as architects, we always have to be in this position to assume that the users would like them. And we wouldn't know that until the project is sort of completed and to see the users enjoying it. And when they sort of give remarks about how happy they are in the building, how things are working well, and so on. So I guess
that's more important than the awards.
Well, we don't chase for awards.
Because it's the end user that will actually evaluate the space,
Yeah.
not the award. Of course, the awards are bonus. It's a bonus to the company, but really, what matters most for us is the end user, how they feel about our project. I think that matters a lot to us.
And then when we know some of the ideas that work, we actually carry that through to another project as we progress and we move on. But at the same time, testing new ideas and so on, so that we come with new solutions,
or new ideas.
On that note, I would like to share a little bit of my as a user, because I stayed in the Chloe Hotel, and there is something that must be said, which is the visitor journey, that you've been crafting entirely from the main street, how to walk, how to go in, how to go up, to walk in these outdoor spaces, in this outdoor corridor, the feel of the breeze, beautiful light going through the breeze soleil that you created. So there is a really sense of good, It's a really feel-good project and a feel-good moment. And on that, I have some questions, because you have a certain way of looking at things. When we talk about, recycling, reusing elements, so we always think as something that is pretty simple. I take something and I will reuse it in a certain way. But the way that you are doing it is that you are using existing material, not only for an immediate reuse, but as your initial shop house, when you did the wall as the form. And that is quite innovative, because when we think of reuse, repair, reuse, recycle, you really go beyond that, which is basically using elements in a very different way that is unexpected. So how do you convince clients to do that? Because they will be like, what are you doing with these things? So how do you convince clients to go with you in that innovative journey?
Well, to be honest,
let Mars do it.
to be honest, it wasn't easy, but I guess sometimes things fall into place. Like in the case of back home, you mentioned about the reusing of the materials. It was also, we had to be thankful to the constraint that we had with the whole project. The project is actually situated in Kuala Lumpur, in downtown Kuala Lumpur, where there was a lot of issue with logistics, with bringing in materials, exporting out materials. Behind the shop houses, there was sort of back lane, but it was hardly accessible for the servicing or for bringing in materials to the project site. So logistic was an issue. So that, I think, sort of started the idea of how we got to minimize bringing in things and out from this place. We got to reuse them as much as possible. It may translate to certain cost saving to the client, or it may translate to fast tracking the project. But I think initially that sort of started the whole conversation about reusing those materials. And again, the challenge is always client that always look at the dollar and cent to whether is this going to save money? Is this going to make it faster? So I guess, like I said, things fell into place that it worked out to be, beneficial for both the client and for us to be able to test our ideas, which in the end the client was very appreciative of our effort. Little things that we have to do. I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not a big project, it's a small project, but it's something that we actually put effort in slightly more than, in order to achieve something that's different, But of course, it didn't come easy. It's not a sort of smooth sailing in that sense, You got to go through all this challenge to actually, make it happen,
Yes, and then on that, I have a related question, because you've been trained in Australia. And the start of your talk was really exciting, because the shock of coming from Malaysia to Australia, and then even to come back from Australia like to Malaysia, and to have this change of perspective. And you've been practicing for 20 years now. So do you think that through all of the projects that you've been doing, changing perspective, it is something that is part of the methodology of the main architect?
Changing what? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Changing perspective.
Repeat that?
Yes, like changing perspective, because the fact that you were talking about how coming to Australia, you changed perspective, and coming back from Australia, it also changed your perspective. And so throughout these 20 years of making of your practice, is it something that is fundamental in your methodology to constantly change perspective and the way that you are looking at things?
Well, yes, definitely. I mean, like I said, I shared in the earlier slide of my idea of what architecture is, with the big mega structures and so on. And we were taken away from that, and we had to look at more vernacular, smaller scale buildings, which with that actually made us, appreciate the finer details of what architecture should be,
I think for me, being in Adelaide, I was always surrounded by conservation projects. And because of that, I've always been passionate about conservation. And when I came back to Malaysia, there's hardly any. That's because you're practicing in Kuala Lumpur, and Kuala Lumpur has, this is a developing country or city, if you want to put it. Everything is new. And I think if I was to do it, I would need to be in Penang, where there's a lot more conservation work happening, but obviously not. I'm based in KL, but it's always been a passion of mine to do conservation work. So we're very fortunate in the office that we do have bits and pieces of this project. And I think that's where, and I think Mas and I share the same sentiment. I think that's where the project, we can have the project like 10 years in our office, if you know what I mean. It's a long time, but it's something we're passionate about. So I guess 10 years doesn't really matter as long as you were happy to do it. I think, so of course it was a bit of a shift, but if you look at it, our core values hasn't changed of what we like to do. I think even if we were to practice in Australia, even if we were to practice here, I think our core values would not change. It's just a different landscape to build. If that answers your question. Yes,
totally. And what I do appreciate is the passion that you have, each of you separately, but also both of you together. So I will ask a very personal question, because it is quite rare to have a couple working together, living together. So how is it? Do you have, because I was about to ask, do you face challenges with your clients? But do you face challenges as a couple?
Yes, I think honestly, our dinner is actually our office meeting. So yes, I think the thing with us, I think with Mas and I think we're at the same time with two different people. There's a bit of cross and balance there, because I'm a very practical person, and Mas can be very, not practical at all. So that's when I think that's where the balance comes in. And sometimes he wants to do things for the client that is, I would say, like, are you mad? Who would even do that? Because I come from a more of a practical, I have a more of a practical solution, which is very boring.
Yeah, I'm always the one that gets us into trouble.
He's the dangerous one. Yeah, we get into trouble with all his design. Yeah. So I think that's where the check and balance happen between us, where sometimes he would share, maybe I want to do this, and I will come back and say, no, I don't think you should because of what. And sometimes I want to do something, I say, maybe you should do this, and he'll come back, how much boring can you get? So I think that's where we come in as a team, really. And it is very challenging because it's a fine line between this is my scope and this is your scope, and you don't want to get into each other's face. And we do that all the time, though. We do that all the time.
So I have the tendency of going off tangent, you know, spending too much time trying to design, and she'll come back to say, hey, how much fee are we getting? You know?
Yes, I'll be like, we're not getting paid to do this, so we better not do this.
Yeah.
But no,
Okay.
I think that's where I respect that. That's where Ma's passion is. He loves doing things. Whether he gets paid or not is a different story, but he will put his heart and soul into it if he was to do something. So, and yeah, I'm the one like, hello, you know, like.
Okay. I will ask you a very last question because we are already beyond the allocated time.
Yes.
So you've been having like 20 years of a fantastic journey that is extremely inspiring and exciting to see. You shared your successes, you shared your challenges. Moving forward in the next 20 years, where do you see Domain be? Continuing operating from Kuala Lumpur, opening a new office in Penang, or even like going overseas beyond the shore of Malaysia? Where do you see Domain Architect be in the future?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one.
I think honestly, I mean, we're still going to be here.
I'm already looking at retirement here.
But you can't, you know, architecture is a curse, you know. I mean, once you're in it, you can't get out from it, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what I say. But I guess it's a curse in a good way because it's what we are passionate with. It's what we like to do, you know. It's like our hobby that we can't stop doing it, you know, until the last day we are on this earth, you know.
I don't think we'll ever turn into a commercialized company, if you know what I mean. I think we'll probably keep it very niche. I think that's what we have always believed in, to keep it very niche. So that's one. I know we've been talking about it. I think we'll keep it to that size, you know, to that scale of projects, and hoping that we can contribute more with even new clients that have the same vision. So we've been very fortunate with that. We have clients on what has the same vision as us. So that I think contributes a lot to the success of our project. I think without these clients, we would not be getting Kapas, Chloe.
But it's hard to find this kind of client. So we ended up not having so many clients or not having so many projects because we also want to do like really good projects and not just any commercial projects out there. You know?
Yeah. So I'm because I'm receiving some feedback of the audience, and they're all very impressed by the quality of the work that you are doing, the quality of the spaces that you are crafting, and I should really commend you on that. What Domain Architect is providing to Malaysia and Southeast Asia is a very strong critical approach to architecture, a sense of freedom as well that you have in your practice. And I do appreciate when you say that you will not turn into a commercialized kind of company, to keep that sense of freedom in generating spaces that are beautiful, that are sincere, that are generous, and very human. So I'm again very impressed with all of the work that you are doing, and I'm grateful to have you today in our TAB series to share in a Singapore context and in a Southeast Asian context and beyond our region your expertise and experience that you are developing in Kuala Lumpur. So keep going, guys. Really, it's an amazing journey that you are in. Continue impressing us with all of the structure that you are creating. I can't wait to see the extension that you are doing above this historical building. So Nora, Mass, thanks a lot for being with us today, and thank you for Domain for existing and for bringing us like amazing element in our region. So with that said, I will now handle I will hand over the last conclusion to Patricia from Cosentino. So thanks again, Nora. Thanks again, Mass, and Patricia, the last word of today.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you, Nora and Mass. I think Jan said it all. Basically, it was an amazing presentation, so inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing all your work with us. And I'm sure we'll be doing more great things, maybe in our showroom in Malaysia as well, not online. So thank you again. Thank you, Jan, for always bringing amazing speakers to Cosentino. And for you all that are watching, we have a new TAB series coming up. It will be on March 30. So we will be sending the invitation soon. Stay tuned. And thank you again. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.